Hi, hello. Um,
Hello.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Bad week. Okay.
Okay.
Now we see you as well.
I'm really apologize for being so late. Um, I'm really sorry.
No worries, no worries. We are such honor to have you here. My name is Stefano, and together with me there is Gianfranco, Alessia, Barbara, and Anna Poma, who's the curator of the Festival dei Matti.
Good.
So, well, we have sketched out some questions, trying to how to say, intertwine your films and the topics of our festival. This year's
Can you tell me a little bit about the festival
Yeah,
before
yes,
we?
of course, of course. This year's edition has been named after a verse of a song by one of Italy's most important songwriters, Fabrizio De André, that says, "Spring doesn't knock; it comes confidently in." So we took this verse as a message of hope. And in general, with the festival, we aim to reason about psychological and psychiatric diseases, the question between normality and anormality, and the revolution of Franco Basaglia.
Right.
Okay.
Good. Sounds a big topic.
Yes, it is. It's also an actual topic. Anyway, let's start with the first question. Well, the main characters in your films are sometimes totally entangled in an oppressive system, as for example in It's a Free World. But more often, they find the strength to oppose its logic, even though they not always survive the rebellion. Consider, for instance, Daniel Blake, who has the state and the bureaucracy representing it against him, and finds himself in a Kafkaesque situation with no way out. These particular circumstances are the seeds of a mental suffering that then expresses itself in many ways we know. However, the cure, you seem to say in your films, is not what we are usually used to thinking. So, how do we cure ourselves in this free world? What is needed?
Well, that's a big question. I guess what we've tried to do is to show the contradictions in society and to put it at its very simplest, the fundamental conflict at the heart of our society, really across Europe, is the conflict between those who sell their labor to survive and those who make money from it, those who exploit it. And the great lie we are told is that we have a common interest. We all share the same problems, and of course we don't, because the interests of those who exploit labor, the interests of those who own and control the finances, the industries, who make profit, is in a system built on competition, is that the winners are those who provide the best products or the best services at the lowest cost. Now that means you keep your costs low by exploiting labor. And that means there's a constant war to undermine the value of labor, to pay lower wages. So that means weaker trade unions, it means wage cuts, it means job cuts, so that you employ fewer people. So that's the interest of the ruling class. The interest of ordinary people is that you have a secure job, you have secure income, you have secure home, secure food for your family, you have a education for your children, you have pension when you're old, and there is security from the moment you're born till the moment you die. And those two interests are in direct conflict. They can't be reconciled. And that's the fundamental conflict we have. And until that is recognized, I mean, they're irreconcilable because the system demands it. And another great lie we are told by our politicians is that you can make capitalism, for that's what it is, you can make capitalism work on behalf of ordinary people. Well, of course you can't. Of course you can't. There is bound to be that conflict. And so you can tax a little, but in the end, the priority is profit. And that comes at the expense of the people. I mean, Lenin, not a popular figure now, but Lenin said, the ruling class can survive any crisis as long as the working class pays the price. Now, we've reached a stage and now where the basic things that Labour won, like the 8-hour day, like you couldn't be sacked, you couldn't lose your job unless there was good cause. The wages, there was a minimum wage you had to pay. All those protections have gone in what we call the gig economy. Does that mean, you know what that means? You know, the gig economy. The employer, ideally, from the employer's point of view, he can turn labor on and off like a tap. Now, of course, that brings great poverty. It brings, for people who have nothing, it brings hunger. And part of making their system work is to tell you, if you're poor, it's your own fault. It's your own fault. You know, but poverty, everyone can work. If you try hard enough, everyone can work. We know that's a lie. But they have to insist on this. Otherwise, you challenge the system, and they don't want to challenge the system. So it's your fault. So you have to be punished if you're poor. So they cut your wages. And if you need money from the state, then they make it very hard for you to get the money. And for those, so starvation faces you, which is what we tried to show in our Daniel Blake. And then if you're working, then the struggle to find enough money to keep going with the gig economy, insecurity of work, is a huge mental pressure. You can never relax. We know some people are doing 2 and 3 jobs at the same time, work in the day and work at night. So it's huge mental pressure. So the pressures in society, when you have no security, driven by the economic system, are very destructive. And we're seeing now a massive crisis in mental health in our country, massive crisis. And they have no idea why, because they will not challenge the system, because the system, to the right wing, to the capitalists and the social democrats, key to important that. In fact, they're the most dangerous of all, because they claim to represent workers. The key thing for them is profit. So if they believe in capitalism, capitalism has to work. It will only work if they get profit. Harsh competition means more and more exploitation because to maintain their profit. So the mental health mental ill health is increasing greatly. People are having breakdowns, partnerships, marriages are failing, because you can't, to live with constant financial pressure is very, very difficult. How do we resolve it? I mean, to me, the only way is through, well, it's the old way actually, which is class struggle. Is to recognize that this society is based on class struggle, and to organize in trade unions, to organize at work, to organize in communities, to organize to defend schools, to defend services, and to link up. Because as long as we are isolated in this community, in that union, in that country, and we don't link, then we're beaten. I mean, that's what we tried to show in the last film we did called The Old Oak, that our strength is solidarity. And the fact that if we are united and we support each other, those at work can stop everything. Because in the end, we don't need to exploit. We don't need exploiters. They need us. Because they depend on labor. We don't depend on them. And the lie that we accept that this is the only way we can organize our lives is disastrous. And one last thing to add, that system is at the heart of the three major issues we face. The first issue we talked about, the lack of labor protection, exploitation, low wages, insecure work. It's at the heart of that, clearly, class struggle. It's at the heart of the struggle for peace and human rights, because the great powers, the big powers dominating it, whether it's the United States, whether it's China, Russia, whatever, struggle for control of spheres of influence. I don't know what the phrase is in Italian, but spheres of influence, where they can control the markets. And particularly for the West, we need the ruling class needs markets for their goods to make the profit. So that means countries have to accept their investments for cheap labor, for markets to sell their goods. Therefore, they have to control areas of the whole areas of the planet, of the world. So there's an aggressive foreign policy, as in Ukraine now, or the most terrible things that are happening in Gaza and in Israel. Cruelty, no human rights. So the struggle for peace and human rights, again, the fundamental cause is the search for markets and for profit. And the climate disaster, because what is killing the destruction of our natural resources, we can't plan how we use the world's resources, because the big corporations want it for their pursuit of next year's profits. We need oil. We need to produce more. Next year's profits depend on our using oil, or whatever the fossil fuel is. They will not plan, because it means giving up their profit. If they give up their profit, they lose, their system fails. So it's at the heart of everything. Sorry, I've gone on far too long.
No, don't worry. I think you captured in a very good way our global condition. And well, now I would like to jump from a global context to an individual one. Looking for Eric is a film about a man's radical and desperate condition of misery, where at a certain point a kind of madness comes into play. Eric Cantona, the main character's idol, comes out of the poster and starts supporting Eric in his revolt, in his struggle. So, do you think that madness is not as dark as it is commonly portrayed and still has some benefit?
Well, it's hard for me to say that. I mean, it's a joke, really. I mean, it's not meant as a psychological study. I mean, it's a little fantasy, a film fantasy, and it's a little joke, and it's a way for Eric Cantona to in a way to make fun of his own public personality, the way he is portrayed as this philosopher, footballer, and he's very. I mean, as a man, he's very funny. He's very modest, but he's portrayed as this like philosopher, footballer. And of course, he's just a man having a laugh, really. But the underlying serious bit is someone who he's struggling to get control of his life, really. That's all. So he has these imaginary conversations with Eric Cantona, who just says no, say no when you have to say no, and also the support of your friends. Again, it's about solidarity. A lot of what we've done has been about solidarity and the friendship and comradeship and the strength you get from others. But it was a little, what's the word? Souffle, I suppose. And I wouldn't want you to take it too seriously.
Yeah, no, of course, but from our point of view, we thought that that kind of delirium was how to say functional for him to survive in his condition. So yeah, that's why we ask you that. Well, speaking of delirium and psychological and psychiatric issues. In 1967, you directed In Two Minds, which tells the story of a girl diagnosed with schizophrenia. So, today, has the way you consider mental suffering and the collective responsibility for this changed since then?
Well, yes, it became a film called Family Life. Which is the same story for the cinema. And I think it's, in the 60s, there was one doctor, psychiatrist who became very famous, called R.D. Laing. And he wrote photo, he was a Scotsman, and he wrote famous books. One was called Sanity, Madness, and the Family. And I think he became very fashionable. And the producer I worked with had a particular interest in his work. And really it was Tony Garnett, his name was. And it was his project, which I directed. But Tony was the driving force. I didn't know as much about it as Tony. I met R.D. Laing, and the core of his idea, I guess, was that the symptoms of what was called schizophrenia could often illustrate an oppressive family situation. They'd be like an allegory. Or a metaphor for what was happening in the family. When a typical example, when the mother says to her daughter, "You're just like me," in a way, it's a casual remark, but in a way, taken too seriously, it means you're denying the other person, their personality. You know, you're just like me. I know you, I can read your mind. And of course you can't, but it's if it's taken literally, it can seem like an invasion, saying a disqualification of the other person. And then the other person, if they're not very stable, feel they don't exist, except in the mind of their mother or father, or whoever it is. And that leads to breakdown. And that Lang's idea, I guess, it's a long time since I thought about it. Lang's idea was that the family was dysfunctional in that it didn't allow everyone the chance to be their own individual person, and that led to the problem. The one person carried the problems of the family, and was the one who was seen to have a breakdown, but actually it was a problem within the family. And he was very careful to use the word that people suffered from the diagnosis of schizophrenia rather than suffering from schizophrenia. And his views attracted a lot of opposition. And I think, I never, I think now, obviously there's a balance between people's disposition not to be able to handle or to deal with that, with overbearing parents, or and other people not being able to deal with it, and how that expresses it. But I'm not really qualified to talk about it now very well.
No problem. Now I would like to take some steps back, since before you made a little reference to your last film, The Old Oak. And in The Old Oak, the identity question emerges in all its cruelty. But at the same time, it shows the way to a possible redemption in the unhoped for embrace of the last, and in the building of bonds within the difference. So what do you think should not be missing in addition to this for a new spring?
I think there are a number of things, really. One thing, fundamentally, the people who come looking for help and the people who have been taught that they should be rejected and encouraged to be racist by the right-wing press or by right-wing politicians, we should see what we have in common. And the people have been encouraged to oppose them, fall for the trap that the reason they have no work, they don't have good jobs, is because we have immigrants who are taking them. But of course, that's not true at all. The reason they don't have good jobs is because when the mines were shut, the coal mines were shut, we didn't, as a society, build new industries, create new industries where there would be good, skilled work, good wages, secure employment, making things people need, and there's lots of things we need. There were good communities. They just needed work. It could have been, if we had a planned economy, you could do it together. You could do it. Public investment. They didn't do that. They wouldn't do that. They could only, in the mind of both the Social Democrats and the right wing, investment can only come if someone can make a profit from the investment. We can't do it collectively. That's not their system. So that's one thing we should remember. The people who come are people like ourselves, you know, ordinary people, suffering often from wars that certainly in Britain we have created, like in Iraq, and the whole area of again, what we call the Middle East. You know, if you live in Iraq or Palestine, it's not the Middle East, it's the center. But from where we are, it looks like the East, but it's not too far to the East, like China and Japan. It's the Middle East. So again, the way we use language shows our colonial history. We are the center of the world, and we had an illegal war in Iraq, massive number of refugees. Some of them came to Britain. Oh, we don't want you. You know, and that hypocrisy, not accepting our responsibility. So that's one thing. Two things really. First of all, the West's role in creating refugees, they won't accept, and also that creating the hostility to refugees and generating racism, again, it supports the ruling class, because they use it to divide us, you know, because if people in our country say we don't want refugees, and we don't like their cooking, we don't like the different color of their skin, we don't like the way they dress, in a way that we're not looking up to the people who are really causing our problems. So racism is not only bad in itself, but it has a use for the ruling class to keep us divided. So we don't want people to miss that. And also we don't want people to miss the fact that the last images are of the militant working class behind those banners, because that is our strength. You know, again, it's the old traditional socialist analysis, but it's still true. You know, yeah. It's active, organized demands on a class basis that recognizes the fundamental conflict, really. But also, I guess something else we wanted to say was, this is who we are. If I see you fall down in the street, I'll run and help you up. You'll do the same for me. It's who we are. And it's the ruling class and their right-wing press that has to make us lose our humanity. Again, look at what's happening in Gaza. And yet in our country, I don't know if it's the same for you, in our country, they're trying to stop even the support marches for the Palestinians. Even that they try to stop. And both the two political parties support sending weapons to Israel to continue the massacres. It's shameful, and unbelievable. And they tell us, forget the suffering. Don't look at that. This is what we've decided. And if ever anything, they illustrated how their system treads on our common humanity. Look at Gaza.
They are very powerful words. Thank you. I would like to ask just one last question. In Jimmy's Hall, the main character wants to stop doing politics, but then he starts again. He relapses, let's say. Now, after your last beautiful film, you tell us that you will stop making films. Can we hope to see you relapse?
Well, I'd like nothing more, really. But I've got a few health issues at the moment, and I think it will be quite hard, really. It would be quite hard. If I started one now, I'd be over 90 by the time I finished it. And there comes a point, when when you can talk about them okay, but actually doing them, it's quite a lot to ask. So in fairness to the good comrades I've always worked with, I have to say I think that's it. But it's very sad. I'm very sorry.
Well, I can say that we will miss your film.
Very kind. You're very. No, I mean it's such a privilege to be able to make films. Is such a privilege, and we've been luckier than most. I mean, the one thing I must say as well is that I've always worked with a writer, so it's never an individual, you know. And the writer begins with a blank sheet of paper. I mean, we talk about. I mean, I've worked with Paul Laverty now for over 30 years, and we talk about everything, from the idea of making a story or what are we trying to do. But then Paul has the blank sheet of paper. Paul writes the characters. Paul writes the story. Paul writes the dialogue, you know. And in a way, that's the most creative element of the whole thing. And I worked with other brilliant writers before. But I say Paul's been over 30 years, and he's a wonderful writer and a wonderful comrade, and we share everything, you know. Obviously, the way views on the world and how the world works, and we're in touch most days still. And I mean, he began as he was a lawyer, and he went to Nicaragua as a human rights lawyer, and when he came back, he wrote and said, "Could we try and do something?" And of course, I said yes, and that was one of the luckiest moments of my life, because it means I've had this ongoing partnership for 30 years or more. That's been, and the producer Rebecca O'Brien for 35, 36 years. Many the same editor for 40 years. Same two designers, one directly following the other for even longer. So that in a way, you know, I could walk away. They'd still make a good film, because we've worked out a way of working together, and really a kind of aesthetic, really, and a common purpose, and so it's very good. You know, it's if a conductor has been in front of an orchestra for a long time, I mean, he just does the downbeat, and he can walk off and have a coffee, and they'll finish the symphony without him. Really. So that's good. And the other thing with huge stroke of luck is that we've looked across to Europe and not across the Atlantic to the Americans, because the Americans are destroying our own film culture, because the Americans have to dominate. They're not interested in partnerships. Whereas, I mean, we've always worked with your European co-producers, and they're generous, and they're generous spirit. I mean, and we work as equals, and we don't cost a lot of money. You know, nobody makes a fortune, but it's just enough to keep going, and we've kept going for say over 60 years now. So I've been very lucky, immensely lucky, immense privilege, really.
Yeah, again, in the case of I say again, in the case of American cinema, it's a matter of profit and business.
It's the same old story.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, there's some very good filmmakers there, obviously, and there's an independent sector as well. But it's hard to find. I think it's hard for it to struggle. And new technology has changed a lot. You know, I mean, the films that we used as the one I've used as our model, particularly, are the early post-war European films, the Italians, and then in the 60s the Czech films, particularly East European films. French films, Italian, obviously the Italian neorealists. And there's so much, so many different traditions of European films. Many of them are falling away. And I hope they're revived. I hope people keep them alive, because it's a great cinematic, artistic heritage. Very good. Well, I'm really sorry not to come and see you in person, because it's Zooms are too remote, aren't they? You end up making a long speech rather than just having a chat, really. But anyway, well, I hope the festival goes really well, and
Thank you.
Thank you. You
Thank you
very
very much.
welcome.
well, really nice to see you, and sorry again for being so late. And if you, in the course of your research, if you come across the secret of eternal youth, then do let me know, and I'll have a bucket full. Okay.
Will do. Will do.
Okay. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Ciao.